I'm going to give a quick introduction to myself because there are a few of you who don't know who I am. A lot of this information will be familiar and actually well known to those of you who train with me or have trained with me for a while. So in some ways, it is going to be a review for you. We're going to go over a little bit of scent dynamics. We're going to talk about scent dynamics when it comes to sort of the three major elements in NACSW: interiors, vehicles, and exteriors. And then hopefully we're going to actually apply that information and talk about some types of hides and searches that you need to be able to do, as well as have a little practice at the very end. So if you are not muted, please make sure you are muted to limit the crosstalk. And Lynn Wilkes, who is my dear friend and boon companion, has just joined us, and I'm going to ask her to pitch in. And if Lynn, if you have any comments or you have any great ideas that you want to share, don't hesitate. As we go through this, I am adding people even as we speak. As we go through this, I totally spaced out. I have to take a quick break for 1 minute. Hold your horses, folks. Hold your horses. Hold on. All right, there we go. Now, the very first thing I want to do is make sure I have that up. I do. I found a little video that I found quite interesting that comes from PBS, and I'd like to play that. It's only about 4 minutes. So I'm going to share my screen. Here we go. And then we'll go. Not you. You're going to come to here. Not you either. Hello. What a smell looks like. All right, there we go.
Whoa, what's that? Looks like a space alien puked. Can you guess what it is? That is an odor, or at least what an odor looks like. Odors are normally invisible, swirling around us, but I'll tell you the secret behind why you can see this one. Hey there, my name is Sikon Akpan, and you've landed upon the first episode of Science Scope. Here we'll put science itself under a microscope, showing you how amazing discoveries are made and the people behind them. First up, these trippy looking waves. This smellscape is brought to you by high-powered lasers, a gigantic tank of water, and this guy.
You can learn more about this problem from sitting and looking at something like this than just about anything else.
That's John Kamal, engineer and fluid mechanist at the University of Colorado Boulder. His lab studies how smells move through space. Do they drift like clouds or curl like smoke, or do smells have another shape altogether? The answers will lay the foundation for a nationwide project that is studying how animals and humans use smells to map their surroundings.
If we have situations where we want to detect, say, a location of a chemical weapon, or if we want to try and find hidden contraband, or if we want to find somebody that's trapped under the snow in an avalanche, the tools we use in the 21st century to do this are animals.
Or people, and that puts both at tremendous risk. Grimaldi and his colleagues want to outsource this risk to robots by teaching them how to smell. That sounds pretty wild, I know, but think about it. We have machines to replace our other senses, such as cameras with facial recognition or implants to restore our hearing, but we don't have similar technology for smell. Step one is learning how air carries odor into our noses. Air isn't static, as you might think. It's turbulent, like a river.
One of the ways of thinking about turbulence is it's a collection of rotating pieces of fluid that people often call eddies. And there's bigger eddies, and inside those eddies are smaller eddies. But the point is that flow is structured. It's not, it has an element of randomness, but it has a high degree of structure.
Smells are tiny chemical molecules that get swept around by turbulent air. But these odors can also travel underwater, where creatures like fish and hermit crabs can smell them too.
And it turns out that the physics of flows in air and flows in water are exactly the same.
So Grimaldi's team measures these odors underwater. They start by pumping 5,000 gallons of water through a 50-foot long tank. Next, they spread laser light into a sheet that slices through the water, and then finally comes the dye.
And so what we're doing is we're using a special kind of dye as a surrogate for the odor. And this dye has exactly the same types of properties that an odor would have if it were in this flow. But it has a special property that if we shine a laser light on it, then it fluoresces.
What they find is odor moves like taffy. It's constantly being pulled and stretched into thin filaments. If you've ever caught a whiff of a bakery when you walk down the street, you've picked up a filament. In some areas, odors get dragged away, leaving a blank space. This blank space is called intermittency. Small disturbances like a quick sniff are the tugs in this smelly tug of war. Here's a demonstration built by Grimaldi's team. A tube is standing in for an animal's nostril. Now breathe in. Now exhale. And you create an olfactory cyclone that changes the structure of the odor plume. So whenever you're in a garden, stop to smell the roses. Just remember that every sniff you make is changing the aroma for someone else. Next time, we'll continue this journey through the science of smell with Grimaldi's colleague, Lucia Jacobs. She is studying the smell tracking behavior of rescue dogs, hermit crabs, and cockroaches. I'm Sikon Akpe.
Thank you, Sikon. Okay, back to me. So just as a quick intro, I wanted to give some additional time to people to log on, and we've had a couple of additional people join the group. I'm Nancy. I train nosework as a hobby. I am an AKC scent work judge. I'm also a member of Ithaca Dog Training Club. And our group has done a fantastic job of hosting trials, NACSW trials, and that stands for the National Association of Canine Scent Work. If you would like to get a wonderful free education on scent work and how dogs work odor, the very best thing that you can do is to volunteer at a trial, because you will see wonderful searchers, you will see not such wonderful searchers, and you will learn an incredible amount. So I'm going to go back to the screen share, and this is Lynn Wilkes. Wave again, Lynn, if you would. Lynn Wilkes, as I said, is a very dear friend. She's an experienced handler. She has handled 3 dogs in nosework now. I've only handled 2. Actually, I've handled more than 2, but I've trained 2, and my Akitas are deaf. My Akitas have their elite championship through NACSW and all of their AKC master titles, as Lynn's little girl Ruby is a NACSW elite champion also, and has her AKC master titles. So screen share again, and we're going to come to this. So I have a love-hate relationship with Prezi, so I'm hoping this works. Rather than use PowerPoint, I always think it's death by PowerPoint. I put this on Prezi. So there will be a little jumping around today, but here we go. So why do we care about hide placement? There are so many people who just take some hides and, you know, slap them out there and think that's good enough training. Why is it important to actually think about what you're doing? Because it seems so simple, right? Take some hides, you put them out, let your dog run. It's actually not that easy. So it's simple, but it sure isn't easy, because you have to understand scent dynamics and scent theory before you can understand a lot about hide placement. So as a quick overview, you need to know about the ideal gas laws, because the movement of odor and air is going to depend on these gas laws. So they're going to involve pressure and volume and temperature. And for us as nose workers, the big ones are temperature and pressure. Temperature, easy. Hot air is going to rise. Cold air is going to fall. And pressure means basically molecules are going to diffuse, move randomly from an area of high concentration to an area of low concentration. And this might not seem like a big thing, until you are in a search area which is leaky and or has doors opening and closing. So when you talk about how you control airflow, it's actually going to be controlled by differences in pressure. So if there's an area of low pressure, of course, air is going to flow in that direction because you want to restore equilibrium. So in order for airflow to happen, you're going to have pressure differences between 2 points. That should be understandable, as well as a continuous flow path, what's known as a flow path, or an opening, which is going to connect those 2 points. You have all probably heard of scent cones. And when you think of scent cones, you think of something that is nice and geometrical and is easy to understand, like the cone on the picture on the left. I stole this screenshot, which looks like the Peter Max drawing, from the video we just watched, because odor is not really terribly predictable. I stuck this here because this shows you a nice, this bottom right image shows you a nice diagram of what's known as laminar flow versus turbulent flow. When you talk about laminar flow, you have parallel currents of odor moving in the same direction at the same speed, and it's basically like you're traveling down the highway. And then you hit something like a breeze that's coming across that laminar flow, or an obstacle or something, and you end up with crazy, chaotic turbulence. So scent plumes are going to be important because, especially when you're outside or if you're in a really leaky house, because the size of the scent plume and the angle of the scent plume is going to depend on how the wind is behaving. So if you have a light wind, you're going to have a shorter cone or shorter scent plume that is a wider base. And if you have a strong wind, of course, it's going to be opposite. You're going to have a further reach of odor, and that angle, that cone, is going to be much more acute. No wind, you wish for this, right? You wish for this picture on the upper part of the page, because the odor is just floating there and it's easy to find, and yahoo. The wind, of course, as soon as you introduce wind, you are going to develop that scent cone or that scent plume. And depending on where the dog is located, that scent plume can work in your favor or against your dog's abilities. So we went over that. We're moving on because we're going to talk a little bit about interiors. When you talk about interiors, the airflow is going to depend on 3 different things. One is wind. If you live in an old house, you know that wind will affect the airflow in your house. There's what's known as the chimney or stack effect, which we'll talk about in a minute. And of course, if you have an HVAC system that's kicking on and off, that can affect things too. So the chimney effect, according to Wikipedia, you can read that. So basically is the air buoyant or not? And what's happening when the air is buoyant? So why does it occur? Because there's going to be a difference between what's happening indoors and what's happening outdoors relative to air density. And that's going to be dependent on temperature and moisture. So temperature and humidity become important. If you take a look at this, leaky house, right? Air is coming in, and theoretically the house is warmer than the outside. So this is a winter, so this should be happening. Hot air should be leaving through cracks out the top. If you take a look at this guy, this just shows you how leaky houses can actually be. We look at our house and they look like they have a lot of structural integrity, but they're leaky. And the older the house, the more leaky it is. So let's talk about exteriors. When you're out there doing exterior searches, you might want to realize or try and figure out which way the wind is blowing, because the airflow is going to be affected by that direction, as well as the speed. And for those of you who have trialed extensively, you know that both of those can change in an eye blink. Temperature and humidity is, of course, will both come into play, and the environment, which is basically what is actually in the search area. So temperature, we know, hot air goes up, cold air goes down. You look at this and it looks like a pretty simple picture. You got a little fire here. that this whole picture might be compounded if there's sun coming in through that window by additional furniture that's here, which is going to block that flow of air. So this looks like a nice simple picture, but it gets much more complex depending on what other furniture you have in here, what other barriers there might be, and whether or not there are windows through which either air is leaking in or sun is shining through. Humidity, of course, people love humid conditions. Oh boy, when the humidity is high, the odor is going to stay low and it's going to stay in the area of the hide. Think those big, fat, heavy snowflakes that fall when it's damp out. In dry conditions, the odor can spread and dissipate, and it can be really hard to find those tendrils. And if you think about that, think about a windy autumn, late autumn day where leaves are blowing all around your yard. That's a great analogy. Now, what's actually in the search area? When you're looking at a search area, what's in it? So let's take a look at this. Here's that laminar flow versus turbulence again. And there's the transition, the area where the transition occurs is marked nicely. And you need to remember that the structures that are in the search area are going to probably be the biggest factor in what and how air and therefore odor is going to move, especially if it's windy. Take a look at the yellow picture there. You see a solid barrier, and it could be a full wall that's 6 feet tall. It could be what's known as a pony wall or a half wall that's maybe 3 or 4 feet high. The odor is going to fly over that, flow over that. If you take a look at this and through here, this can be a little tricky because if there's not a lot of odor, or not a lot of wind, is this a vacuum or is turbulence happening here? And that's going to depend on how fast the wind is and how hard the wind is blowing. This is a classic example of those dreaded slotted surfaces. If you do searches where you're searching pallets or you're doing your, please make sure that you're muted, please, folks. You're searching up against a fence, even a cyclone fence, those holes in that fence or the slots in the panels can make a huge difference in how odor is going to be behaving. Hi, folks. Can you please make sure you're muted? Getting some feedback there.
It's too much loss, I guess. Some of the nurses have described it like a war zone, but
Hello. Everyone should, thank you. Please mute. All right. If you have an incomplete barrier, here's a bush. Whoops, here's a bush. Take a look at what can happen. Some odor will go below, some odor is going to go above, making the odor puzzle a lot more complex.
Hi, Nancy. I was just going to throw in that the whole picnic table combines a couple of those aspects. When we're searching picnic tables too, you can get.
Right, because you have the slots because of the benches.
And you have the incomplete barrier as well. You can get, I've had Ruby have to go over a table to get the scent a couple times.
Yep, that does happen. Now, I put this in here because this gives you some idea of what's happening depending on what the shape of the object is. Clearly, if you have a wall, there's going to be this lovely laminar flow and then bam, it comes up against this wall and you start to have turbulence behind here. If you have something that's round, you maybe have a gazebo, there's going to be turbulence behind the gazebo. Even turbulence behind this sort of ovoid structure. This, look at this, look at that. This is what you want because of that lovely laminar flow. Lovely, right? Just lovely. Now, just take a second. Imagine a bench. Just pick, just any bench. Put in your head a bench. You think, okay, well, a bench would be an easy thing to search. How easy are some of these? Let's go through them. This shouldn't be that hard, right? Because the odor is gonna, if the wind is coming down through the picture towards us, it's going to either go over the top or come under the bottom. Not so hard. Let's take a look at this. If you look closely, you can see that these slats that form the back actually extend down below. And this lovely plumy grass in the back, depending on where the hide is and what the wind is doing, this can be actually a very tricky search, especially because of these little holes right here. This is probably the easiest of the benches to search because it's on cement. There's not a lot of stuff around it, and it's basically easy to get around. So you can get, the dog can get around every single area. This is a little bit more tricky because you have taller grass, and that might trap the odor and keep it pooling. So unless the dog actually does a thorough search, you might not get anything on that bench, even if it's hot. This looks pretty straightforward, doesn't it? Unless you are coming to the bench from up here in this upper left corner, you're walking from the upper left corner down to the lower right corner, and the wind is going in the opposite direction. Because if that wind is going in the opposite direction, the odor can actually get trapped along that curb, and the dog might, depending on how strong the odor is, AKC odor, for example, 2 drops per Q-tip, the dog might be used to NACSW odor and might false alert up here. These lovely leaves, who has not searched in leaves? Who has any trial experience? The leaves can trap odor and make things a whole heck of a lot more complex than you think. So these look pretty straightforward. Yeah, just a bench. They can be challenging. So we're moving on to vehicles. Here's my beautiful girl. Here's my lovely boy, little red dog. This is the undercarriage of a car. So if you have an inaccessible hide, one that the dog cannot put its nose on, and it's in the middle of the car, if you have a dog that is inexperienced, depending on where the hide placement is, the dog might have to work its nose off to find that. And I actually asked a friend if I could use her video of an inaccessible vehicle hide. This dog at the time was quite green in terms of doing vehicle searches. And she's running a known hide. See the stress? The dog is looking, concentrating on something else. That's, I'm confused.
Alert. Yes, good boy.
So not my favorite because she leads her back to odor, but I give her a lot of credit because she let her dog work that hide without putting any pressure on him to move faster. She didn't try and help him. She let the dog figure it out. If you looked at the shadows of the trees in that video, there was not a lot of air movement. If you remember the beginning of the video, the dog actually started to search the other vehicle and figured out pretty quickly, odor's trapping here, but it's not on that odor. The odor is not on that car. It's actually on this van here. So good for her. So this is actually in a wind tunnel. These pictures are taken in a wind tunnel, but I thought this was interesting. I have been in vehicle searches where it feels like there were gale force winds. So For those of you who have been in similar situations, you know what I mean. Lovely laminar flow, and then coming off the back, crazy, crazy, crazy amount of turbulence. And same here. So this is just a block. Same here, you can see the turbulence. What I think is interesting is this. This shows you the movement of some of the air currents, and it's actually looping back on itself. And you got a little turbulence going on in through here. Just as a note, the two areas on cars that are overrepresented in terms of hide placement, license plates and wheel wells. So let's actually talk about the nitty-gritty. I really appreciate the fact that my sister allowed me to use this video, because this to me is actually painful. She was doing a search for, I'm gonna speed this up so we don't have to watch the whole thing. She was doing a search as a demo. I think if we come here, you can see the dog working.
Yeah, I was thinking.
Clearly an odor. Whoops. So come back. I lost my place here. So this actually disturbs me a lot. How do I go back to the beginning? Because you heard those people laughing. It's not funny. Nothing about that is funny. That hide placement is so poor. I want you to stop and think, if you have a nervous Nelly dog, if you have a dog that is at all reactive or has any trepidation about working in an unknown area, I want you to think about what that dog's experience just was. If it was searching a tree, found a hide on the tree, and the tree fell over on it. So when it comes to placing hides, please, please, please use caution, use common sense. Don't use things that can tip over. Don't use anything that's pointy or sharp. Make sure that you are using areas that are big enough for larger dogs. And that, I don't care whether or not you have a toy poodle. If you are setting up hides, the hides should be set up as if you are running a large dog, because when you are in a search area, the searches ideally will be set up as if they can accommodate a dog of any size, whether it be a Mastiff like Abby's Argo or Mickey, or an Irish Wolfhound. Make sure that the hide is placed in an area which can accommodate large dogs, because that is what your tiny little dog will see. Make sure you're not using tight areas like corners or wheel wells or tables or where there's a lot of stuff. Avoid tangles of cords. And you should also avoid fabric or any sort of material, because that'll suck odor and hang on to it. And you want free movement of odor to make it fair for the dog. So I put this in here because I have seen people actually place hides on blades of farm equipment. Please don't. Every single one of these things poses a hazard. This is one of those examples of there's too much stuff in here. So this might be great for a tiny little beagle or a tiny little toy poodle. This is not a fair search area for a large dog. Too crowded, too much can be knocked over. The dog can't turn around, can't back up, just too much. This is the danger of wheel wells. This is Bounce. You know, this woman's, I know the woman who owns this dog. She said I can use her pictures. And Bounce is a very brave little dog. She had to remove Bounce's head from this search. This is from a trial. She had to go over and take the dog and bring the head down along the wheel and pull the dog out. This is almost as bad, although there's a little bit more room here. Danger, danger, danger. Oh, it's so tempting to put a hide back here, right? Nope, not with all those cords. This doesn't look like that, something that's that big. Neither does this, right? Unless you have a bulldozer of a dog that will go through anything to get to odor. So if your start line is over here outside the picture and the odor is back here and there's enough wind coming under the tent to send that odor under here, I know dogs will actually go under the table, knocking things over, potentially getting caught. Very dangerous if it's on lead to get to odor. So if you are going to place hides in a situation like this, you have to be really careful of where and how the odor is flowing. And you don't want to have the chairs all lined up. You want to have the chairs sort of pulled back so the dog can access it without having to clamber under or over things. This is actually a place where those of you who train with me, you'll see this is familiar because this comes from the vet school atrium. This can be equally as dangerous because I know you guys have seen dogs, and I'm thinking of one in particular who is crazed and really fast, and it's a Catahoula, who will bowl through something like this, knock over chairs to get to hide on the other side.
The other thing about that space is that there are open sockets, power plugs underneath these tables as well. Everywhere.
So don't use open live sockets. That said, I do know judges who have those sort of electrical boxes that have a back with Velcro, and they stick Velcro to the wall and they stick those boxes up.
Somehow it seems less dangerous when it's on the wall than when it's on the floor. I don't know.
Still dangerous, electrical. Material, this actually I took from a video of a search that my girl dog and I did in New Hampshire. Franklin Pierce College, that was it, right? Oh, it's so tempting to put something along here, right? But around this metal rack, all these metal racks are up under this plastic shelf or something. Nope, because material acts like a big suck. Now, let's talk a little bit about complex hides. So inaccessibles, I think I mentioned them before. Basically, all they are is a hide that's placed so the dog cannot get its nose directly at source. If you are placing inaccessibles, you need to make sure that the inaccessible has the appropriate amount of time to age, because you need to give that hide time for the odor to diffuse throughout whatever you put it in and around whatever you put it in, so the scent can actually be available so the dog can find it. And how the object is built and formed is going to dictate where the odor is going to be most available. So let's take a look at some examples. Here are those dreaded slotted surfaces. You have a stack of pallets. I wouldn't necessarily use the stack of pallets unless there was something sort of, if these two stacks of pallets were together, because they're even the slightest bit unstable, things can fall over on dogs. You never know, crazy things happen. Crazy things can happen. So be a little careful with that. The hide is up here on the stool. And this one, the hide, you see where the dog is indicating at the crack in the locker? And this hide is actually, this is bounce again. This hide is actually inside the boat, and the wind is coming across the boat, and the odor is pooling and then pouring up and over the top of the boat, which I think is actually an interesting hide. That's a really nice puzzle. It is for a more advanced dog. If you have a novice dog, a green dog, anything below master or NW3, please don't set up hides like this. You want your dog to succeed. You don't want your dog to go cray-cray and lose its mojo. Here's a louver classic. I would not have these up here. I would not. Glass, to me, in a search area is dangerous. but the dog would be down here. So you never know. It's just not worth the risk. This is another trial photo. My girl had just found a hide in a metal filing cabinet. Oftentimes at lower levels, these drawers will be open, so the dog has more access to odor. In this case, this is an elite search, so I'm walking in, I'm sort of moving in, because I knew that she had found the hide because she had been casting back and forth here. And she was just sticking her nose there, so I knew that the hide was there. This is actually, you can't see this terribly well, but this is a stack. These are stacks and stacks and stacks of waste paper bins. And the hide is actually in the back, in Inaccessible, back here. And you see that she's just putting her head there and she's resting it. That's her indication for an Inaccessible like that. The gold standard, when your dog is searching an Inaccessible, how do you know it's Inaccessible? I thought about playing the video, but it's 5 minutes and it's just too long. So the dog will move back and forth and back and forth and try and get closer and closer and closer. So if the dog is hitting 3 sides to something that is a stack of chairs or a stack of bins, that is sort of the gold standard for an Inaccessible. That's your dog's trying to get to an Inaccessible. Now, I went online and I went onto YouTube and I found this video. And I want to play it. We're going to play it. Okay, we know that. Go away. So let's just stop here. All right. So there are a ton of different places where hides can be. And I want you to just stop and think about where you might locate a hide and why. See these stack of chairs here? Oh, yeah, doesn't that look like a good spot? Check it out. That stack of chairs there. This little cart underneath this car. There's a shelf here. There's a shelf here. Lots and lots. This is actually a pretty interesting search area. So let's keep going. Back it up.
Yes. Yes. Good job. How many do we have? You have 2. One's an each of
The dreaded look back.
Not that one. Oh, nice little butt sitting there. Nice. So you're just looking for the dog to sniff. Now, so to penetrate, right? Push into things, right? So now think of this like a bumper of a car. So at any point in time, she's giving you that communication of, perhaps in the hole.
I don't care if she's talking, never take your eyes off your dog. If your instructor is talking, I don't care, never take your eyes off your dog, ever.
I'm stuck now.
So people are cheering and applauding and saying, yeah, 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 yeah. That dog climbed under there. If that dog was a nervous dog or one of those chairs, that stack of chairs, for whatever reason, when the dog was coming out, fell on that dog, that would be a disaster. That's a disaster in the making. It is a deep Inaccessible, great, excellent. To me, that is a dangerous hide. I think about some of the dogs that we work with, like Tui. I can totally see Tui going in there and having things fall down on him. That is a dangerous hide. If you take a look at this stack of chairs right here on the right-hand side is a better bet. It's not as deep and accessible, but you can put something in between 2 of those chairs and you'll have really nice Inaccessible. Why, or move this table and take this stack here and then put another stack in front of it so the dog has access without having to climb under this. I have no idea of why they would put something there. To me, this is a dangerous hide. And then they have to get the dog out because the dog can't really get out. So probably not the best hide placement, but there you have it. That's my 2 cents. Other instructors may not agree. Oh, now, elevated hides. I had a couple of videos that I could not find, which is a bummer, which had some elevated hides. When you have an elevated hide, the tendency is for odor to drop relatively slowly in that scent plume or that scent cone at an angle. It'll fall at an angle usually. But again, if this is an exterior and the wind is blowing one way or another, if the wind is blowing from right to left, the odor actually may end up going off to the right-hand side of this wall. Now, pooling odor is another advanced, more advanced skill. Here are the people. Odor is coming in this maze and it's getting stuck here and the dog says, what? So I have this little video of my girl Keo, and this is an oldie. I'm trying to stay out of the way while I film this. There's conveniently construction equipment down the road from our house. So the hide is actually, hello, the hide is actually up here, but it's been there for at least an hour. So there, let's go back. Hello. So she checks both sides. And there she has it. Good girl. That was a fun little search for her. All right. Hello. Now, converging odor, another advanced skill. How is that defined? You have a relatively small area and the dog is searching for 2 or more hides. If you are doing this, please remember the hides need to be of different odors. Please do not put out 2 birch hides. It's too confusing to the dog. They need to be set at different heights or planes. So one can be at the bottom of a stool and the other can be at hip height or knee height. When you are starting this, absolutely positively start with 2 hides. Don't start with 3. They need to be different odors. They need to be, the hides need to be placed on different levels. So there are planes of odor and they need to be set at least 15 feet apart from one another. As the dog learns this as a skill, you can move the hides closer together. And when they get really good, you can add another odor. And if you're adding another odor, back up. Start with all the hides 15 feet away from each other again, if not more. Let them age for a while and really be patient and let the dog play out the puzzle, work out the puzzle. Ideally, if you are working a converging odor hide, the dog gets to the middle point between those 2 hides and its head is ping-ponging back and forth because it's caught odor from both directions and has to figure out which one it's going to go to. And again, once the dog starts to get some skills in this, over time, using different environments and different search areas, slowly place the hides closer together. These are a couple of pictures from videos that I have of my girl. These are converging hides. There's a little coat room right here. There's a trash bin here. There's a trash bin here. They're maybe 3 feet apart from one another. The tricky thing about this is that they were both on the lips. You know the trash bins that have the top that you push down? They were both on the lips of at the same exact height. They were clearly different odors, but they were both at the same exact height. This was an elite search. There was actually a hide just under this tall shelf of the podium. This doesn't look like a converging odor hide, except this is a laundry room that was really hot. And those hides had been there for about 2 to 3 hours. So there was a hide under the lip of this little cart, and there was a hide here. Again, not terribly different in terms of the levels, but because of the heat and the humidity and the fact that the HVAC was kicking on and off, this is considered a converging odor hide. So Tricks of the trade. Drains do a really wonderful job of pulling odor towards them. So if you have a hide on this planter here and the dog is sniffing over here, let the dog sniff the drain, because the odor will go to the drain, go down the drain, and the dog says, oh, it's over. Let's follow that odor and go back to this. Same thing with this. Depending on the airflow, the odor will get pulled to the drain and the dog is able to move back to it. So if your dog is sniffing a drain in a search, let him. And this is just another example of a drain in an interior. The electrical appliances and computers are also odor magnets. Odor will move towards the either computers or electrical appliances. So give your dogs time to figure out the puzzles. They might be sniffing at something along here, and the odor might actually be coming from this desk, but being pulled towards the heat and the electricity of these computers. And the same with, say, a refrigerator or another electronic appliance or electrical appliance. So we saw that. Let's take a look at some pictures. This is a giant hole. This came from a search that I did up in Maine, a late search that I did up in Maine. And it doesn't look like there's anything in this hole. Let me see if I can expand this a little bit. I'm not sure I can. I don't think I can. There are a little bit of, there's some cabinets back there. There are these sort of posts that are supporting the roof. Where would you want to, there's a fireplace here. There's a door here. There's like this little weird shelfy thing here. Where would you place hides in here? Would you place any? Because remember that search areas can be blank. Higher level search areas can be blank. Where would you think about placing hides? There's some electrical boxes here. The door here, you could have potentially have an inaccessible here. There's a bench over here. Anyone want to chime in and tell me where they would place some hides?
I'd throw one on a post.
How high up?
Maybe about 2 feet.
At Elite, they can be up to 20. They can be as high as you want in Elite.
Put it on the ceiling. No.
That's a summit hide, right? That's a summit hide. Yeah. So, 10, 14 feet is not unusual in a Elite search. Anybody else?
What about the door? What about it looks like there's a barn door here.
Right here. And this is actually this weird shelfy thing. It's not a barn door. If you're
okay, because it looks like a door. I might consider putting a hide there depending on the level.
Anybody else?
How about a door handle on one of the doors?
That's a possibility, but remember that the hide has to be invisible.
The bench on the left.
Bench on the left?
Mm-hmm.
What about, there are little cabinets back here. I know this is hard to see. Little cabinets back here. There was actually an inaccessible here and she missed it. Right, she sniffed, sniffed, and she said, no, and kept on going. So she missed that. There was only one hide in this room, BTW. And for those of you who are unfamiliar with me, my dogs are deaf, so I very rarely run them off leash because I have no way to control them if they're off leash. That said, as soon as I started letting my boy dog run interiors off leash, he was finding every hide. All right, so here's another, this is the same, this is part of the same search. Okay, so where would you put hides here?
What level are you talking about?
Any level.
Not anywhere near the sofa, any of those sofas.
In
They're
the,
fabric.
Bad idea, right?
There's that
That
nice
yellow
yellow
bucket.
bucket over there.
Yeah, the yellow bucket.
Oh, the yellow bucket. Doesn't that look like fun?
Yeah,
Mhm.
pipe running along the top.
What about in the dresser drawers for inaccessible?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here.
Behind the TV.
Behind the
No.
TV.
Nobody would never put it behind a
Oh,
TV.
God. You knocked the TV over. There's $2,500 that you're paying. Anybody else want to chime in?
Are these plastic buckets next to that couch on the other side? I can't tell, or what is that next to the,
There's this right here.
yeah, what's that?
It's a shelf and there's a microwave on it. This is
Uh,
one of those
Do
plastic.
you- I was actually in a trial where it was in a microwave.
I've heard that too. I haven't seen that, but I've heard that. How many dogs found that?
Not many. I think, because I think it was a 5-hide search and a lot of the dogs got 4, but not the one. I assumed that the one they mostly missed was the one in the
Okay.
microwave.
What about a threshold to hide somewhere by this door?
Well, the issue with that is there's fabric here, right?
What about behind the door? Is that an open door
You know,
that's propped open?
propped open? That's a possibility. There was
Yeah,
one,
that was my point. Someplace on this door.
there was
Well,
one-
often they don't like to have, you don't like to have a hide on a door unless it's really stationary.
Because
I
they
mean-
can knock the door open or closed.
Yes, and they can, you know,
And it's got glass.
I once had it, it was in a bathroom and it was on the hinge on the inside of a moving, the door was moving open and shut constantly of the, you know, they didn't lock the door open.
Jeez.
And so a dog trying to, and it was a high hide, dog trying to go up to get to that hinge, it keeps making the door weighing open over and over. And if this is warm room, your scent is going to be going up. So you could have, and it's trapped behind the doors, you could have a dog going up to try and find the scent behind a door. So usually I haven't seen a lot of door work unless it's a stationary door.
I haven't either. There was one hide and it was in this, I think it was in one of these drawers. It might have been in this little like one of those little plastic file, it was someplace.
Yeah.
All right, and then this is part of the same, this is that big, huge hall that we left. So this
Yeah.
is part of the same search. Where'd you put hides?
Under the black table,
This back here or this here?
that one there.
Easy to
With
get,
no- The one with no chairs.
easy to get to. No problems with that.
Well, I'm talking novice, so.
If you take a
Chairs are a favorite of judges.
chairs were a favorite. And if you're taking a look where Keo is, these were actually chairs like this with cloth. It was an inaccessible in this cloth, in these cloth chairs that were piled high here. And she came around and she spent a lot of time going around and around and around this table. And I finally just said, either it's there or it's not, and you're not indicating, so I'm not going to call anything. And we left. There were 3 hides in the search. All that space.
Wow, with all those cloth chairs, 3 hides in that space, you could get a lot of,
Not in this space, in the whole search of the 3, this space.
oh, of all the rooms.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, that's not bad.
Yeah, there were 3 hides and this is one big search and it was only 3 hides.
Okay.
Here's my boy dog. This is down in someplace near Pittsburgh. This was a fun search. Yeah, he loved this search. Oh my gosh, he loved this search. So where would you put a hide? Where'd you put hides here?
Under the coffee table.
So you're saying under here.
Yeah.
These
There's
are,
a-
there's a bin here
And there's that bin.
and there's, you know, those
What is this yellow back here?
yellow is those plastic containers that hold, that you can stack on top of each other that hold, I think, milk gallons.
Ah,
Something.
Slotted surface, inaccessible, but there.
Plotted surface, yes, and a lovely inaccessible. There's actually been, the camera didn't catch this, but there's a file cabinet here. There's also this table. Anybody else want to make a comment or not?
You could also maybe put one under the bases of the chairs.
Under you down here,
Yeah,
or this little side table. That's
yeah.
something. 2 hides. There was one in the file cabinet, inaccessible, and there was one under here, also inaccessible. And he worked this. He came down. He went, where's something? And then he went down this little hall. It was like going back and forth and going down the hall, back and forth and back and forth. And I finally just called in, and he got it. Nothing else. There were 2 in this area. Nothing else here. And this is also part of the same search area, the same search, I should say. And spoiler alert, it was in the napkin holder on this table. There was only one in this area, and it was there. He was very excited because it was at nose level for him. He just went and bonked it. It's right here. And then this is also part of the same search. You came down this hall, and you went out. So you look here and you think, oh, benches and tables. It was raining. Yay, rain, because humidity keeps odor low and keeps it in place. And it was actually a little courtyard, and I was so tempted to let him run off leash, but the end line was here, and there was like a mirroring table area over that's behind us. So because I can't call him, where would you put a hide? Where'd you put hides?
Under that
windowsill
flower.
over
Yeah,
on
that's
the
why I
right.
was gonna say the windowsill.
Yep. Under that pink flowering bush.
Someplace around here.
Around here. You
Yeah.
generally don't find
They
hides.
almost never allow they almost never put hides in what they call landscaping. If
Because-
it's something that was humanly planted on purpose and is landscaping, they never put it in what they call landscaping. If it's a wild forest area and there's a rock or a tree, they might put it. But if it's like humanly designed and put there, they won't put.
Oh, it's mostly on hardscapes.
No, it's just that if it's,
Structures.
it's just that if it's the planting is human landscaping design, say,
Okay.
they don't want it
That's
ruined
good-
by,
that's
because you
good to
figure
know.
if you have 30 or 40, with the beginning levels, 30 or 40 dogs going through the area, those plants are going to end up trampled because the whole plant will smell like odor and get
That's-
ruined.
Yep.
So there's a drain here, right? I walk out here and I think, oh my God, a drain. But there was nothing here. These benches, I was thinking, okay, converging odor, but what about this little bin back here? There was a hide on one of these benches, I think on the far side, and then he came along and worked this hide that was on this windowsill really nicely. And he said, I didn't even want to come out here. It's like, this is a waste of time. He wanted to go back through the door, but of course, because at the time I was neurotic and made him search everything. He's like, this is stupid. You want to go back inside and find the napkin holder hide again, because he really liked that one. And this is the doorway. This is the entry to that search. This is all one big search. The napkin holder hide was over here. So you can't, there was like this set of chairs and then was that set of chairs. So where would you put something here?
I like the sign.
I thought about the sign too. It's like, oh, go check that sign, buddy. Right, because they were, right, this is PVC here.
Yeah, you could stick it, yeah.
Stick it right in one of those. Yeah.
And also, Nancy, knowing your dog and some dogs that are biters or scratchers, I tend to think the judges, if they're using any common sense, are not putting it on too much leather or cloth that can be damaged by either of those things. I know they do sometimes, but.
Surprised, because I can distinctly recall 2 search areas. Both were in baseball stadiums. One was skyboxes, a series of skyboxes. It was 5 skyboxes in a row. It was an elite search, and you had to go from skybox to skybox to skybox. And I have that video somewhere. And there was another one where it was the CEO's office of the baseball team, and they put it in his very expensive mahogany furniture.
Oh my God.
One hide was in a drawer and the other hide was on, I think, if I remember correctly, the CEO's chair.
Whoops.
My dog is a biter, and the CEO came running after me. He did fine in the skybox one because the hides were placed on metal things or things that couldn't get damaged. But the CEO came running after me after the CEO office chair and said, "Your dog can be dismissed from a trial for aggressively alerting." And apparently he said that to about 5 or 6 other competitors. And to me, that is a function of poor hide placement, because why would you put something at risk when you cannot guarantee that even a dog that generally is quiet and gentle in their indication doesn't do something crazy? There's no guarantee that that won't happen, because in
And that's something I think people need to always take into account when they're using not their own personal space.
Right.
Is that, are you going to be damaging anything? Like even if you were going to hide something in Home Depot or something, you always need to take into account.
Not yours.
It's not yours, and it shouldn't look like your dog did anything. And, you know, it's not just big biting dogs. There are a lot of little digging dogs, you
Right.
know, little terrier type dogs that like to dig.
Right. And the issue is if you're someplace else, you always want to be able to go back. So you got to make sure that you're taking care of that environment. Yeah. So guys, I don't think yep, that's the last of it. I don't have anything else. Questions, comments, feedback?
Just one, Nancy, have you done much searching? I've done searching in rain and wind and a little bit of ice outdoors, but not ever in really snowy conditions. Have you done much searching in snowy conditions?
I have, yeah.
Does the odor seem to move much differently?
It seems to stay lower because oftentimes, at least in the Northeast,
It's wet.
It's wet, right?
Yeah.
It's damp, unless it's really cold, like some of the days that we've had recently. It's pretty damp, so the odor just sort of hangs out in its one location. Dory was down at St. Michael's, Maryland, and Toka and I did a trial down there in February, and it was gale force winds off the Chesapeake. It's right on the Chesapeake. And there was a hide that the assistant certifying official, the assistant CO, had placed on the top of one of those giant metal containers that you find on the back of semis. She placed a hide at the top of that, at the very top corner. And I'm telling you, the only way that a dog could have found odor was if the dog had been able to go out about, I'd say 100 feet out into the Chesapeake and swim in and find it.
You showed that hide to us in the first class I took with you.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was like,
no dog got that hide.
The plume was in the water. There's no way to find it.
Yeah, it was impossible to find.
Nancy?
Yeah.
It's Bar. So on that vehicle search, where was the hide underneath the vehicle? Or was it around the other side underneath?
The Roddy search?
Yeah.
Well, that it was in the wheel well.
Okay, but you had showed us before a vehicle where they might have put it completely inaccessible underneath.
Oh no, I just showed you the undercarriage of a car, because you don't really think about how complex and textured the underside of a car is.
Yeah, well, I was wondering because she was going back, Roddy was going back and forth like inaccessible on the
wasn't inaccessible.
On the other side of the car. And I was wondering if it had been an inaccessible, you could have called it because it was brackety.
Because very little odor flow, because it was not very windy, I would not have accepted that.
Okay,
I would, but then that is at the judge's preference. The yes zone for a hide, what the judges call a yes zone, I mean, how much tolerance does a judge have in giving a yes, is going to depend entirely on the conditions and what the judge sees, how the dogs are acting,
yeah.
what the,
Because
the actions of the dogs.
Pippet probably would have wanted to go under the car to get to the wheel well on the other side.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And small dogs would, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah. And but you've taught us not to let the dogs go underneath.
Right, because it's dangerous.
It's dangerous, yes.
So they just need to learn to go around.
Yeah, right, yeah.
That learning that go, oh, I can't get it from this way, let me try going around. And if it's truly inaccessible, they can't get it by going around, so that you know it's inaccessible and you can call it where sort of in the middle of their bracketing.
Okay. Thank you.
Nancy, this is Becky. And with all the snow, I'm really tempted to want to try a buried hide in the snow.
It's fun. And I've done that because we have giant, I was actually just doing that the other day. We have giant snowbanks in the driveway here.
So could you give us some parameters if we wanted to try that?
Well, it's going to depend on what level your dog is, right?
I would start with it not too deep, Becky.
Maybe half an inch, maybe, not even. Just put it in the snow and put a little bit of snow on top of it and practice that. Right, you always set the dog up for success by making it really simple, and you, in very little increments, you make it more and more and more difficult. You don't throw a hide into 18 inches of snow and say, go find it. And I'd be interested to hear the feedback on that, Becky.
The feedback of if I do it, what happens?
Yeah. And
the reason I'm so interested in doing it is because with all the shoveling I've been doing, inadvertently, some toys have been buried outside. And the next thing I know, I go out there and there's this giant hole and it's been uncovered. And I'm like, oh my gosh, if you can smell a toy,
oh yeah,
you're going to be able to smell a hide. So I'm really tempted, right, to dig some holes and do it. So
and do it. Let us know what happens. Report back.
All right.
Inquiring minds want to know. Have fun with it.
Yeah.
One more thing, Nancy, is that people also need to take into account what their body is in the environment in terms of blocking odor or making odor bounce around.
So that
Which
is another can of worms, and
yep.
I'm going to be judging a lot this spring, and part of me is very excited to do it, and part of me is worried, because when you judge, it doesn't matter what level you judge, you see wonderful handling where the handler is getting out of the dog's way and letting the dog just do its job. And you also see people dragging their dogs around search areas and check this, check this, check this, check this, show me, show me, show me. That is like nails on a chalkboard for any judge, and it's even worse for the dog. Those of you who work with me know I will cut your tongue out if I ever hear you say, show me. Right? Because if you have to tell the dog, show me, then you have done a bad job in training your dog. The dog should go to odor and stick to odor and not leave odor. The dreaded look back. People train that dreaded look back, and it drives me nuts. I'm going to get out of the screen share here for a sec, and I'm going to come here while I'm talking. I'm going to go to YouTube and pull up. I'm hoping I can find this. My little girl, my wonderful Keo, perfect, perfect, perfect girl. And I know how to find it if I can't. YouTube is taking forever. Hello. Here we go. Hang on. I cut my finger and I can't type right. Here.
So this is
Oh,
Karen.
I'm sorry, this is who?
This is Karen Netherton. I just want to say that I helped Nancy when she was judging at the Albany trial in Cobleskill last year. And I will honestly say there were times that I would see people do things and I would cover my head and close my eyes, waiting for her to yell at them. She's so polite as a judge, she never would. But I'd sit there going, oh my God, she's going to kill them. And she never killed them. She let them get away with it. Now, later on, she might have grumbled about it underneath her breath to the other people assisting, but it was very entertaining. Just want to put that out there. She's a very polite judge.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I do have manners when I'm in public.
Yeah, there were times I just cringed waiting for it to happen. Never happened.
Well,
I'm somewhat disappointed, but it's okay.
Thank you, Karen.
You're welcome. You're so welcome.
That said, you know what they're doing that is problematic, right? That's a problem. So let's just watch this here. This is Keo working in Inaccessible hide. The hide is simple. I can't, wherever she puts her nose, she's like, I don't really care. This wait, odor. And I'm trying to stay out of the way of her. And I have a GoPro on. It's right about there. And she's localizing. I want her to be real specific. This is an Inaccessible. It's about halfway through in the middle of the car.
I can't see it.
Oh. No, none of us can see anything, Nancy.
Right. How about sharing the screen? I bet that would be. Thank you, Doy. I got so excited about showing this. Here we go. Here we go. I have to start from scratch. From here. My lovely Keo. You're such a good girl. She's sort of moseying along. Doesn't seem like she's interested. And then she goes, wait, what? I wanted to be a little bit more specific, so I'm waiting her out. I can't quite see where her schnozzle is, so I step over, and there it is. And she tries to show me with her little paw. She looks up, and look what she does. She goes back to odor. She might look up, and that's okay because she goes back to odor, right? You notice that I don't go in to feed her until her nose is back at source. Never, ever, ever. I don't care how far your dog is away from odor. Do not lead your dog back to odor, ever. I wanted to show you this one too, because this is Inaccessible. Here. This is actually her. This is her last, hang on, hold on. This is her, I think this might be her last elite trial. It is. So hang on. You see where the hide is? See this stack of chairs here? It's underneath this. It's basically below this arrow, a chair or two down. And she's catching odor. She's trying to figure out, oh, is it the door? It's getting sucked towards the door. And she's looking. See how she works this side? And then she comes out, and she works the front, and she works this side.
Alert. Yes.
And there it is. That is the gold standard for a dog that's searching alert. Searching side, front, side. Call alert. It broke my heart that day because she got her championship and elite was over. Here's our friend Mike. That's Mike judging. Anybody else? Comments, questions, feedback? What do you got?
Nancy, this is Shirley.
Yeah.
So it's, from what I'm seeing, it's all about the timing. You have to make sure that you don't want that look back. So I think I get what you're saying about not letting them look back at you. Is that?
So the mechanics for handling nose work looks so easy. It looks so easy. It looks as if you can just let your dog run around and once they find odor and you can just run in and reward. That the issue is my dogs are deaf and that makes it a little easier because they can't hear when I say alert. The issue is that dogs know that alert means food. And if you're training with me, you're going to feed your dog. You're not going to give them a toy or give them a scratch or tell them they're a good dog. They're getting cookies because you want them to work, and you want them to be able to work for up to 10, 15 minutes if you're doing AKC detective. That's another topic. So what I call the dreaded look back, which is, we saw that in one of the videos. I think that the video where the woman was actually in the car video, and the video where the dog got stuck in the pile of chairs.
Yeah.
Woman says alert, the dog looks back, and then the person takes the cookie, puts it on the dog's nose, and leads them back to odor. Never, never, ever, 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 ever. And
yeah, okay.
Lynn has had this experience because her dog is small and fast. It matters most the higher you go. Lynn has been in a scenario, and you should chime in here, where her dog is so fast, she's finding hides in rooms that Lynn has not gotten to yet because she's outpacing Lynn. Lynn can't run up fast enough to keep up with Ruby.
And the judge won't even be in the room yet. Neither I
Oh.
nor the judge will be there yet.
Right, and the dog has found the hide, and you want the dog to stick to the hide even if you're not there, because if the dog finds odor and is used to coming to you to get odor, they're going to leave that hide.
Okay, I've got you. Yeah, I understand. Yeah.
I see look backs. There are two things that are going to get me to ask where. One is when somebody says alert with a question, and the other is the look back. If I see a dog with a big look back, I am asking where, and if the person cannot point exactly where that hide is, they're getting a no. And I am not giving no ground. This is not, oh, well, they're 2 feet off, that's okay. Oh, they're 6. If you cannot point exactly where that hide is, I am saying no.
Okay.
So you want your dog like Keo, she looks back, that's okay, right? She looks, but she knows I'm only gonna get paid at source. I gotta be here, I'm gonna be here, I'm gonna be here. I don't care how long it takes. I'm gonna be here. My nose is gonna be here.
So it's all about the training, getting the, yeah.
The training and the mechanics.
Yep, yep. Okay, thank you.
There are trainers who are fine with the look back. I am not. I am not, because over the long term, when your dog is searching, you can't. Holly showed me a video one time of her. I trained with a wonderful woman whose name is Holly Bouchard, who is, in my mind, the best instructor in the US. She's just phenomenal. And she's coming here in July with Jeff McMahon to give seminars, assuming we can get into Cornell and use their space. Please, oh please, fingers crossed. She showed me a video one time where her dog looked back at her 14 times. She didn't call 14 alerts because the first alert would have gotten her knocked out of the search. She trained her dog to keep her nose, bam, at odor. So when she said alert, the dog was still at odor. The issue with not training sticking to source is that the dog starts to anticipate the alert and they come off odor. And I've seen dogs coming 6, 8 feet away to get their cookie. I'm not a fan. I've seen too many times in trials. I'm judging and I see that, and people get no because the dog, the dog might be fringing and is looking back. Is this right? Right? Especially if it's a handler-led search and not a dog-led search. Is this right? Am I close enough? They look back, they get an alert. And I say no, because the dog isn't close enough, or they can't tell me where the hide is.
The other issue, Nancy, with the look back is sometimes there's something really interesting in the search area that smells really interesting, and it's not one of the odors, but the dogs, you've taught them to birch and then clove, then anise, then cypress, then your scent. And I was at one trial where more than half the dogs got disqualified on the vehicle search because there was some kind of roadkill or something on one of the wheels.
And
And the dogs would smell it and look back and say, this is pretty cool. Do you want me to do something about that? And the owner would stare and stare and the dog would go, okay. And they would, paw at it and the owners would call alert.
Yeah, that happened in the first series of trials that we hosted, right? On Emma's car.
Yeah.
There were dogs that were false alerting because of some sort of something on her car. It was roadkill or something. Yeah.
But sometimes when the dog's looking back at the handler, they're kind of going, well, this is kind of different and new. I'm not sure. Should I do something about it? And in the middle of a trial, you can't tell which look back you're getting.
Right. If you run an unknown hide, you can't tell what look back you're getting. Right. Anything else, guys? Just this popped into my head because Kathy Hughes and I had a discussion about this. We were out at Robinson's Construction and we were talking about hide placement. And the door opened in and there was a desk right here. And just before the desk was a fire extinguisher. And the bottom of the fire extinguisher was right about the level of the desk. And we talked about, well, should we put a hide at the bottom of the fire extinguisher, which might have been a nice threshold search because it was boom right there, right after the door came in. The issue with placing something on that fire extinguisher is that door was opening and closing right next to it. And the odor would have been pushed up against the desk. And it didn't seem like a fair hide to me because of the fact that the odor was being pushed up against the desk. And it was just a little too funky in my mind to make that a fair hide. Anything else? So when you're looking at hide placement, make sure that you're looking at things around it. I saw a video recently from somebody that sent me a video where a hide was, they had ring gating and there was an electrical socket on a wall and the ring gating was maybe 4 feet from the wall. And I don't know what was happening with the airflow, but the dog had to go behind the ring gating in order to turn around to come and try and find the hide. And just make sure there's enough room for the dog to move around and it isn't, hide should be clean, shouldn't be confusing and complex and kind of dirty. Hide should be clean, especially if you're training lower level dogs. You can always shoot me an email if you have questions. Happy to answer them. And if you want to take pictures of potential search areas and want to get online and talk about where you could place some hides, we can certainly do that too. That's all I got, guys.
Well, thank you, Nancy.
Hope that was
It's always good to rethink about all these things.
It's always good to rethink about all of these things. You're absolutely right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Nancy.
Nancy.
Thanks a lot.
Good evening, guys. Hello. There she goes. Have a good night, folks. Hey, Patty, you still on? No, she got off. All right. Shirley, you have any other questions?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Okay. See you soon. Bye for now.
Yep.
So I'm going to stop recording.